And now a word from our title sponsor, DoorDash. We're proud to share that Beyond a Ballot continues to be powered by DoorDash. Just like we go beyond a ballot, DoorDash goes beyond delivery. Over the course of this season, we've heard stories from Dashers and small businesses across Canada. From Dashers building flexible schedules to restaurants finding new ways to reach guests, each story reflected something different about how people build work and connection into their everyday lives. What stood out across all of these stories is that opportunity doesn't always look the same. And whether it's through a delivery, a shared meal, or a new customer discovering a local business for the first time, each story reflects connection in communities across Canada. Thank you, DoorDash, for powering this season of Beyond a Ballot.
Hey, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot,
powered by DoorDash. Parliament has risen, and honestly, after the session that we had, everyone deserves a nap. 6 months, 24 bills, a trade war with our largest trading partner, a sweeping new digital safety regime, a unanimous income tax cut, and a prime minister who built a majority government without ever going to a ballot box. Busy doesn't even begin to cover it. Welcome to the season 3 finale of Beyond a Ballot. I'm Rachel, and we're closing out season 3 the only way we know how, by bringing together brilliant women. Joining us today are Michelle Ferreri, former member of Parliament and our conservative voice at the table, Nicole Brassard, who is a public affairs professional bringing the liberal perspective, and Jordan Leichnitz, a public affairs professional who will be flying the NDP flag. Jordan, Michelle, Nicole, welcome to Beyond a Ballot.
Hey,
It
hello.
sounded like that. Remember that like daycare show where they held up the mirror and they're
Romper
like,
room.
I see, thank you. I see Michelle and I see Jordan and I see Nicole.
Well, I see you all, and I am so happy that you are here for our final episode of season 3. I couldn't ask for a better group of women to talk to today. But let's jump in, because Parliament has risen for the summer. MPs are back in their ridings, and not only federally, but provincially, municipally, everyone's a bit on edge when it comes to politics in this country right now. So I'm hoping we can jump into all of it. But starting with Parliament, I'm hoping that we can chat a little bit about where are your parties right now at this moment in time, leaving the session, the parliamentary session, and going into the summer. Maybe I'll start with Jordan and tell us about the NDP. What's up with them?
I think they're grateful to get back home and watch some World Cup games, like most Canadians. So
who isn't?
Yeah, I think the deep interest in politics has a pretty tight radius around Parliament Hill at this time of year. But yeah, it's been quite a year for the NDP. So if you remember, of course, in the last election, they suffered a really historic loss. They lost party status down to 5 seats in Parliament. But this year was also their chance to elect a new leader. So the leader through the previous election, Jagmeet Singh, he stepped down on election night. And in the spring, the party chose Avi Lewis as their new leader. So Avi is somebody who might be known to Canadians, maybe actually by his partner. So his wife, Naomi Klein, is, of course, a pretty famous activist and author. But Avi's had a pretty long career in activism as well. And this is his first time sort of taking a really political role, although he comes from a very political family. His father and his grandfather were both NDP leaders as well. So he's stepping into that role. He doesn't have a seat in Parliament yet, but his job is really to get in there and rebuild the party. So it's a tall task ahead of him, but he's been focused a lot on affordability issues. And I don't know about you guys, but I think about those issues every single time I go to the grocery store, as I know many people do. So he's got a pretty good issue set to talk about. And I think for him and for the NDP caucus this summer, they're just going out, they're talking to regular people in their communities about those things, those affordability issues, things like housing, that are really concretely impacting people in their day-to-day lives. And so I think that's what we will see from them a bit this summer.
Yeah, and interestingly, his father actually passed away, wasn't it the day after that he became leader.
Yeah.
Crazy story. Okay, on to Michelle. Big session for the Conservatives. Pierre Poilievre obviously out and about across the country now that Parliament is not sitting. Where are the Conservatives in this country right now?
Well, I think they are where they've always been, right? Which is trying to communicate and get across to the Canadians about affordability and being the alternative to the solution to making life more affordable. I think it's great to have the same conversation across the forum. I think most people would say the top issue is without a doubt, affordability. I think about like my sister, who's not super political, right? But when she's like, holy crap, strawberries are expensive, or that kind of stuff is where people really start to pay attention. And then I have this argument a lot with a lot of people. Like, there's people who know their politics, they know it inside and out. They identify with an ideology or a team or a brand or whatever. They're like, I'm liberal, I'm NDP, I'm conservative. And then there's the Joe Blow kind of person who's trying to go through their life of like, I don't know, they're all the same to me. I just want to be able to afford my life. And so I think affordability is the issue to win on. I think Pierre has been truly effective and been the leader on that issue. And so now I think it's okay. Are we able to convince the public that this is the guy that can actually make your life more affordable? Because we haven't seen a shift in affordability getting better. We've seen it getting worse, right? So I think, okay, what are we going to do about that? So I think being out in the public, which is Pierre's, he's very strong at that. I was with a group of ladies yesterday at a golf and country club. They're like, I went to a rally one time. He shook every single person's hand. And I was like, yeah, it was 2.5 hours. So I think that'll be good for him. I'm sure, the other leaders will do the same. And I think being with the people, Ottawa, as many of you guys know on this podcast, is a complete bubble. It is like you are disconnected from reality when you're there. Like it's a bubble. And so being on the ground and talking to people, and that was always my goal when I was working as a member of parliament. I tried to gauge the people at the arenas and the grocery stores. Where are you at? Where is your head at? And what is of importance to you? So I always say going out with the people on the ground is huge value.
All right, Nicole, the Prime Minister, how was his session? How was cabinet session? Where are they now going into the summer?
Yeah, obviously a very, very busy spring session. A lot of bills passed, a lot of big strategies even announced too, even into like the last couple of weeks. That nuclear strategy just came out, the AI strategy that we've all been waiting for. So a really, really heavy agenda. So I'm really excited to get onto the barbecue circuit, as we call it, particularly around Stampede. So I think the summer looks like for us, Stampede, a lot of that connecting with community, as Michelle was saying, because as Canadians are focused on the things that matter to them at the grocery store and around the kitchen table, I think there's a real conversation and alignment between both sides of the aisle to be had. And Rachel, you and I have been on a couple panels over the last year, and even the conversation dialogue between you and I has shifted too, to be a little bit more solutions oriented and focused on how we can all work together to find those to make things better for Canadians. So I think it's definitely that. We've got 6 by-elections to call at some point over the next 6 months. Crazy. And so we heard from the Prime Minister this morning that they might not all be done together, which would be a huge lift for the LPC and for the Liberal Party team to get those done. So maybe it's good that we're going to break them up. So those 6 by-elections we still have to get through. We've got CUSMA on the table, which is a whole nother issue that's going to dominate the discourse over the next couple months. And then also the investment summit that's coming up in Toronto, September 14th and 15th. So everybody's kind of looking towards that. We've got a big pension plans coming through, a bunch of international investors coming in to sit down during TIFF. So it's going to be a crazy time. We get to showcase the best of Toronto and all the celebrities kind of bopping around town with all those international investors. So it'll be fun. So I think there'll be just a lot of opportunity for engagement with the Prime Minister and all of Cabinet and caucus as they go out and hit the road.
So I want to talk a little bit about where we're at politically at this stage. So, and I'm going to go to the polls a bit. So we know Carney's numbers, he's maintaining those numbers. We've called it a honeymoon period. I think it's a stretch to keep calling it a honeymoon period. But how does he maintain those numbers? And then conversely, for Polyev, who's had a harder time coming back in the polls, what does he need to do over the summer? And then finally, Avi Lewis, I think this is a little bit about like introducing himself to Canadians and getting known. But I'm curious from all of your takes, like what do each of these leaders need to do to either maintain where they're at or to find a way into the zeitgeist? Maybe Nicole, I'll start with you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm actually really interested in Michelle's answer on this because I want to know how we're going to change the channel a little bit for Pierre and if we're going to say anything different over the next couple of months. So I'll be in the listening portion of this one. But I think for Mark Carney, obviously the latest legislative poll that came out had him 14 points up on the Conservative. And that's a trend we've seen almost since February-ish, like really pulling away in polls that are consistent too. And it's not just about the overall kind of horse race number. It's also when you look at the demographics of those polls as well. He's leading in almost every single category, men and women in almost every age group. I think the only one they're trailing in is the 35 plus to kind of 40 age group. And that's only by 1 or 2 percentage points as well. So really strong numbers across the board. And most Canadians, I think 60% see Canadian or see the economy and see government on the right direction. When we ask that question, right direction, wrong direction on the doors, that seems to be one that they're continuing to be strong in. And so there's been a lot of great progress that have been made, a lot of great deals that have been signed, 20 major projects that have been announced, but doing more of that over the summer, especially to Michelle's point on the affordability piece. So I think as we hit that barbecue circuit in the road this summer, continuing to push the message to deliver real results for Canadians and what that means for us on the ground, who are not maybe paying attention every day to what the polls say. It's really about how it feels and delivering that change for Canadians right now.
Michelle, what do you think?
Over to you.
Give it to us. Yeah.
Michelle with Michelle's strong, spicy personality. Okay. So there's a couple of things. So who is being polled is always my first question. This is always what I find. I make a joke, right? Polls are for strippers or for dogs to pee on. Now that, but I'm not going to dismiss them. Like Mark Carney won the election. It's fine. But I think again, I go back to what I said about going into the grocery store, going into the arena, talking to the real people. Young people typically don't complete polls. For the first time ever, I was with my dad and he got a call from Nanos Poll. And I was like, oh my God, I got to listen to this. I've never been with anybody. I don't know anybody who's ever been polled. I'm like, oh, this actually happens. They don't pull it out of thin air, which was really beneficial. I think Mark Carney has a clock. And it is ticking quickly. He has a majority. He has no reasons anymore. There's no more, he's got a great resume. He's a very impressive man. He's really likable. He's got that Phil Dunphy thing going for him. It's going to expire. And so that is going to be, and to push back a little bit on Nicole's piece about we're really making a difference in affordability, I would say you're not. And I think that is a big piece that people are starting to feel that. So they're going to start to say, where are these results? What has gotten better? And so he's going to be on a clock for that. So consequently equal, like to Pierre equally, as all leaders will be, held to account by the voter of what you are going to offer in exchange for that. So he's going to have to really, showcase more of those solutions, more of those policies that I think he's actually always offered. But I think he's been very effectively branded as sort of the, what do you call it? Like the pit bull or the aggressive guy. And people, I can remember being like, what's your, why don't you guys have any solutions or policies? I'm like, we do. Like, so for example, right before I did the, this podcast, I just was looking online, healthcare. I think it was, I can't remember what the number was. More people are dying, waiting in ERs. Like the number was significantly, like healthcare is out of control, right? And I remember being like, well, we have a blue seal, like conservatives have a blue seal program, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's going to be, voters are going to be really on the hunt for solutions. Like, how are you going to improve my life? And I did this little thing on what is inflation. Cause like my sister's like, well, is 3.5% a big deal? And I'm like, yeah, it's a big deal. Like, because it's compounded. And so now your tomatoes are up 47%. Like you feel it at the grocery store, you feel it at the pump, you feel it in your income tax, you feel it everywhere. And so the Canadians will be like, well, show me what you said you were going to do. Show me what's going to happen.
Okay, Jordan.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think you're right, Amanda. It's not a honeymoon. It's something a little bit more than that. And it has to do with the constant chaos machine that's coming out of the US and Trump and just the destabilization that we see. And I think that when you go back to the last election, there were a lot of Canadians that voted for Mark Carney, not necessarily because they're very partisan liberals or anything like that, but because they saw him as the best person to hire for the job of dealing with Donald Trump. So every time Trump's in the news and that is coming back, I think it gives people, they want to give Prime Minister Carney some space to do his thing. Now, that said, I think that there is a big vulnerability for this government, and it's a little bit on what Michelle was talking about. And that's the question of the distance between some of the really high level economic stuff. Like I always call it like the capital E economic stuff, the global investment in Canada, retooling our trade relationships, approval of major projects. Most Canadians are going to say, look, that's all well and good, but I'm going to the grocery store and I'm still seeing prices are so much higher. I am still struggling to find a home that I can afford. My kid is trying to get a summer job and there's no fucking summer jobs out there. There's none. So people see, even if they agree in principle with some of these ideas, they see a huge distance between that and the impacts in their lives. So that gap is a big vulnerability for the government. I think they're helped by the fact that right now, the main alternative that a lot of Canadians know is Pierre Poilievre, and many Canadians have sort of had a look at Pierre Poilievre and they don't really like him. That's his negatives are pretty strong and persistent, and that's a vibe thing, right? People are just not generally appreciating, unless they're already in that conservative vote universe, they just don't really like him as a solution to these problems. So I think for the NDP and Avi Lewis, Lewis's job, first and foremost, he's got to go out, he's got to get better known, he's got to talk about the idea that there is another person in Ottawa, there's another party out there who's going to fight for you on those issues of affordability. That's not just the Liberals and the Conservatives. And, I think he has this line that's sort of funny as he talks about the Liberals and the Conservatives as the Sobeys and the Loblaws of the Canadian political scene. Like, you don't have to just choose between these two because you're getting soaked with both of them. You can have another option. So that's the case that he has to get out there and make.
Grocery stores.
Hey, listen, don't threaten me with a good time. I'll take it if it's cheaper.
But I think the big question that on everyone's mind, Jordan, though, is Avi ever going to run for a seat? I mean, he's got 6 by-elections coming up to choose from, including one here in Vancouver. Is it going to happen?
Well, he's going to have to run for a seat eventually. But of course, any party with their leader is going to be making strategic decisions about where they run, because if you don't win, it's a big problem, right? So the challenge for the NDP is because their vote is so much lower right now than it usually is. There's not so many safe seats for the party anymore across the country. So I think he is rightly going to face pressure to run. Listen, politics happens in Ottawa. That's part of the gig. So he does need to find a path here. But his first job really, and we're in a majority government now, so there's some time. His first job is to get out there, be known by Canadians, and make it super clear. Something that the NDP kind of lost a little bit in the last election. Why are they out there? What's the purpose of their party? That they're out there to fight for folks, for regular people who are really feeling left behind, but maybe without some of the negativity that we've seen coming out of Poilievre and the Conservatives in the last year. And there's a path, I think, for them on that stuff, because people really are looking for that.
Yeah, it's always funny to me when people say Avi Lewis isn't known being from Vancouver, because
he
was the biggest name out here. So I'll be watching that for sure. Politics often feels personal, and today's recommendation really brings that into focus. It's a best-selling memoir called The Prisoner of Tehran by Canadian author Marina Nemat. And it's her real-life story of being arrested at just 16 years old in Iran for speaking out. She was imprisoned and even sentenced to death. What really stayed with me about this book is how human it was. It's not just about the politics in the abstract. It's about what happens when your voice and your freedom and your identity are all on the line. And I think it's a powerful reminder that the rights and freedoms we talk about here, they're not guaranteed everywhere, and they're not guaranteed forever. Freedom isn't to be taken for granted. If you're interested in the real world impact of political systems or just want a story that's incredibly moving and eye-opening, I definitely recommend checking it out. You can find Prisoner of Tehran wherever books are sold. Has anyone ever heard of this thing called Roses and Thorns? We used to do it at summer camp, and you would say the best thing that happened.
I do it with my kids.
And the worst. Oh, you do? Okay, fabulous. I want to do it with Parliament, with this parliamentary session. And I want to give you a little refresher on some of the biggest things that happened. We, in this session, saw Pierre Poilievre's leadership review, and he did really well. That was January, followed by a plethora of floor crossings throughout this session was one of the major stories of the session. Of course, Avi Lewis being elected as the new NDP leader. We saw legislation like increased border security in response to a lot of the Trump demands. C9, which was a hugely contested bill, but ultimately, because of the majority, passed. We saw a new governor general, conversations around Kuzma and Trump. So tons of things that happened just since January. I'm wondering for each of you, and it doesn't have to be about your party. We can be nice to each other or do thorns for each other, but what
not.
What are your roses and thorns for this session? I'll start with Michelle.
Oh, I have to think now. I have to think on this. Okay, so roses. I don't know. Like, I can't think of something that was like, this is great. Listen, I'm pretty tainted. I don't know how much your viewers pay attention to politics. I got elected. I sat in there and I was like, wow, this place is toxic and does not function. And it is the young and the restless. And nobody answers anything. And it's,
I mean, I wish it was that good.
It's brutal. Like, it's just brutal, you know? And so I think, so for me, like, to be so candid, because I'm not very good at the filtering. It's like, it's just like a rinse and repeat. We tell you we're going to do these things. We tell you these bills are going to do these things, but nothing's changing. Nothing is actually shifting. And so I think that the voter has to start to pay attention. Like, and I guess what I would say earlier, it's like, it's to, asking about what's Pierre got to do differently. What did conservatives have to do differently? Two things. I think number one, the conservatives have an incredibly bright team. Like, there's a huge diversity of people in there with different skill sets. Showcase them, like, show what they have to offer to the world. But it truly is consistency and patience. And I have this conversation with so many different people depending on where they are in their life. Like, most people don't pay attention to politics till it impacts them, right? And I always say this, politics, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. And you have to be involved, you have to pay attention, but you also have to be like, okay, what is actually changing? Because there's a very, very big disconnect right now between telling you that we're going to make life more affordable or we're going to make it safer and actually doing those things. And so I feel like a lot of those bills were the same as they have been. So I think that's a problem. Were the floor crossers positive? No, they sucked. I hated it. It's dumb. It's ridiculous. I don't care what party you are on. It's so stupid. And it makes me want to, like, throat punch you, because I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, if you are unhappy with your party, go be an independent. Like, now the party, I don't know how you as a liberal can now be like, yeah, Marilyn Gladue, let's trust her. Like, what? She sucks. Like, I don't know how anybody thinks that's great. So I think that is shitty. And I think hopefully people will learn from that. And, I don't know. I don't know what any roses are out of Parliament, because I feel like
one rose for us. What about Poilievre's?
You guys being on this podcast? I don't know.
Okay.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. All right, Jordan.
I feel like a Debbie Downer. And to Jordan's point, Jordan's like, the negativity of the conservatives. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm negative. I just feel like I'm telling you what the problem is so that we can fix it. Can we just fix it? I just want to fix it. This is why Parliament was torture for me, because it was just like, we don't do anything.
Fair.
Okay.
That's an insider look.
I think like Michelle has
Jordan?
really captured the sort of end of June energy of
Yeah,
Parliament.
so true. Oh my God.
Okay, so I will do two, but they were not in Parliament, but they were in that time period. So I'm going to bend the rules a little bit. So I think the rose coming out of this session was the response by all the party leaders to the tragedy in Tumbler Ridge. I thought that was such an important moment.
Yes.
Thank
you, Jordan.
You know, for folks who don't remember, like all of the party leaders traveled to Tumbler Ridge and participated in a memorial. And like, you know, so we spend a lot of time in political circles talking about what's not working in our country, and that's a bit the line of business. But I think that was a moment where we can really look at that and say that there is something really human and caring at the core of our politics that remains, and that is so important. And so I was just like, I was very proud of our country that day. You know, it was a horrible thing that happened. It was a complete tragedy, but we had leaders who were adults who showed up to support the community and who did that, like holding hands across party lines. And I think that that's the kind of thing, frankly, that Canadians really want to see out of their elected officials. So that was in a tough situation. I think that was a pretty good outcome. I would say my thorn, also not in Parliament, but scooching on over to Alberta, is basically all the things that Danielle Smith has done over the course of the last year to smooth the path for a separation referendum that is now causing chaos. These questions about will Alberta vote to have a separation referendum or not? It's making all sorts of things more difficult. It's made Alberta not a very appealing place to invest. It's tearing families and communities apart. And some of the people who are involved in the separation side have been using data that was stolen. Like, it's really bad. Like, people's personal data has ended up online. And so all kinds of bad things have come out of this. I think that is a really worrying response. Like, we have big disagreements in the country. That's not new. But we generally have tables to solve that at. And so when there is this idea that like a whole province might just sort of take its ball and go elsewhere, as a response to those conflicts, I think it's really problematic. So this is one that is also going to be a big challenge for the Prime Minister and the federal government going into the fall. So that vote's happening in October. And I think we have absolutely not heard the last of it.
Wait till Quebec gets a new government. Then we're really in for it. All right. Nicole?
Jordan stole my thorn for sure. As somebody who lived in Alberta for 11 years, it's definitely high in all of the group chats. It's the conversation we're all having. And as we all had to stampede as well and try to like play nice as we're flipping pancakes, I'm sure it's going to be the focus of every single discussion that we're going to have. And I know it's been on the radar of the federal government as certainly an irritant, but it also complicates things with CUSMA too. It's really hard to do this one Canadian approach to those negotiations when you do have these discussions or teams going down to Washington, D.C. to have separate sidebar discussions with the Trump administration. So for me, that's been a real thorn this year and something that we shouldn't really have to deal with right now. And it's just complicating things, as Jordan said. I think my rose would be just the speed at which this government's been moving. I know Michelle has other thoughts about that, but we Canadians really did buy into the promise of Mark Carney's leadership when it came to Trump and dealing with a bunch of big issues that mattered to them at the time. And I think we've seen that the results of that pretty well. I think Canadians have a really good sense of who he is and what he stands for and how quickly he's willing to move. And we've even seen this inside of government too. Like everybody is rowing in the same direction for the most part when it comes to the big priorities that need to get done. And that's not just at the political level, that's also at the department level too. And so we're seeing things unlocked in a bigger way. People aren't sitting on their hands in the same way that they used to. Big pieces of legislation and regulation are moving forward in a way that I haven't seen in the last 10 years. And so that's exciting for me because there's an opportunity to really get in there and make a difference. So we don't know how long Mark will be around, but we're happy that we have him for now. And I'll just to respond to Michelle about the floor crossers. I also have thoughts about that too, but turns out Canadians don't. Like, they don't give a fuck how
I think they do.
We did some polling and it was like a third. It's like a third don't care, a third don't mind it, and a third thinks that you should said as independence.
But I
and
think the risk is like it can go to values, right? And Marilyn Gladu is such a good example. It's like, okay, how big is Mark Carney's tent? Like that it includes somebody like Marilyn Gladu, who was on the far right flank of the Conservative Party. So for a lot of the voters who supported the Liberals in the last election, who maybe are more progressive and thought they knew who Mark Carney was, thought he was environmentalist, thought he's someone who cared about climate change, where they see these little spaces where that's not actually what he's putting into action, I think that is a risk for him.
Yeah, I can
agree.
tell you that the tent is big. My conservative husband is currently is a liberal, so the tent is growing. Shout out to Mark, he's gonna love that one. I have a question. A lot of our listeners ask us who to watch, who to pay attention to. Outside of the leaders, we're curious. And outside of you three brilliant women who everyone should follow and pay attention to, who are you watching? Who are you liking right now? Which MP is like impressing you or you're taking notice? I'd love to know your thoughts on the who. And I'll go to Jordan first.
Oh, I think somebody who I always think is a pretty good performer is Mark Miller. And what I like about him is that he is like, I think he's thoughtful. I think he is generally pretty frank with Canadians when something is happening. So he used to be under the Trudeau government, he was the immigration minister who was the one who came out and said, look, like what we're doing is not working. So we're going to change it. And so I think that kind of frankness is good. So right now he's the Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture, and he's got some really big files. So he's going to have to deal with, for example, things like protecting Canadian culture in the trade war with the United States. Like these are huge challenges. And so I'm watching him because I think he's got a really tough row to hoe. We were told time and time again that Canadian culture is not going to be on the table. Well, we saw that actually it has been a little bit. They've been making changes to Canadian policies around digital things in response to pressure from the Americans. So I think I'm going to be interested to see how he navigates that over the next year, because we know that there are these pinch points in negotiations with the United States. And I think Canadians are willing, they understand that to get a deal, for sure, you got to negotiate, but there are some things that people are not okay with trading off on. And so I think a lot of those are going to fall into Mark Miller's basket. So good luck to him. Be watching.
Including online harms.
And this is like, that's a big one too. Yeah, we're just at the beginning of that debate. And I think, frankly, everyone who has kids, especially, like really has a stake in this conversation. And we're going to have some big debates about it as a country, as we should.
Michelle.
People might be really surprised to know this. I actually don't follow a lot. I didn't know till right now that Nicole, till I got on here, that Nicole was a liberal. I didn't know that Jordan was an NDP. I don't actually pay attention to insider politics. People might not know that about me. I actually follow real people, and Jane from, Timbuktu. That's actually where I get the majority of my information. It's where I feel most normal. I feel like a fish out of water in politics because I think it's insane. And I think it's crazy. And I think so. I really listen to a lot of people. I don't know how else to say it. But in terms of the Conservative Party, I think the voices that are going to be really important, because I think the younger people know who we are. We have a stronghold on them. When I was knocking on the door, it was without a doubt, I knew when I knocked on the door, they came to the door, I knew what they were going to say. They were dialed in. They were very conservative minded. But I do think there's a lot of work still to be done on what a conservative is and who a conservative is. So I have a lot of I go on Brad Smith actually fairly regularly. He does AM 640. He's after Greg Brady, who I also think is a great guy, great commentator. And Brad's like, Michelle, I was a liberal. And I said, I'm like, I hear this. And maybe it's neutralizing, because if Amanda's conservative husband is leaving, then maybe some neutralizing. I don't know. But there is this.
I also keep telling Rachel that she's a closet liberal. She hates that.
I used to say that. So I used to tell.
She loves to tell me.
That's like me and Seamus O'Regan used to have that fight all the time. I'm like, Seamus, you're conservative, and that's that. or Leah Gazan. Leah and I would have great discussions. She's an NDPer, and her and I would have great discussions about this. Because I actually think at the end of the day, you could probably find a little piece of each party that you could align with somewhere along the line. But I think the messaging is really right now, a lot of Liberals feel like the Liberals have left that, like everything shifted, right? Like everything shifted. So my long-winded answer to this question is I think voices like Sandra Kobina, Carol Anstey, these are moms of the Conservative Party. You can see yourself in them. Conservatives are not some far right. I used to joke all the time. People are like, "You're a bunch of racist old white guys." I'm like, "Well, last time I checked, my boobs say I'm not." But anyway, thank you. So I think it's an image thing that we still have to work on, and vibes, which I will give the Liberals huge credit. You guys dominate the vibes. You create cool vibes, and so maybe we could take a lesson out of that playbook. But I think we have some very, very bright minds in the Conservative Party right now, for sure.
Love that. Okay, Nicole.
So I kind of have two answers. One is just keep an eye on those 6 by-election candidates from the Liberals. Yeah. We traditionally haven't done nomination meetings in the last kind of year or so. In 2025, we did one nomination meeting in Vaughan, I think it was, and that was it. And so these people are really being picked by the Prime Minister and by the team to sit around the cabinet table or have like a really influential voice, and collecting some really smart people around the table. So that's my first answer, is keep an eye on those 6 by-election candidates and who they are, and where their priorities are. But then also my good friend Braden Cayley, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. He's doing big things. He's quiet. He used to work at the Liberal Party doing comms in Canada 2020. And just keep an eye on what Braden's going to be up to over the next couple of months, because I think he's, especially for BC and sitting here in Vancouver, someone that we look to very often to help carry our mantle over the Rockies over into Ottawa, which is sometimes very hard to do. So shout out to Braden.
Okay. What does each party need to do this summer to position themselves to go back to the legislature, to Parliament in their strongest position? So what would be a win for each party over the course of the next 3 months?
Do you want us to answer what each other's party should do?
Is that fun or is that a bad idea?
I like it.
I have a suggestion for Mark Carney.
Okay,
great.
Michelle, tell us what Mark Carney should be doing.
I think Mark Carney needs to have results. I think his time, show us, prove your resume equals what you say it is, right? So in the negotiation, you ran on this platform that you were going to negotiate with Trump. And listen, I'm not going to say that he's an easy person to deal with. I'm not going down that path. But the time is now for delivery. You've had a year in office. You have a majority. You have no reason. So you're going to have to deliver. You're going to not just say what you're going to do. Like things like the condo bailout thing, that's gonna piss people off. So how are you going to offset that people who can't afford housing are now going to have to pay for a bailout or something like that? So to keep it high level, I don't want to go into a debate of House of Commons shit, but I'm just saying he's going to have to deliver would be my thing. Avi, are we doing all of them, or are we?
Sure, go for it.
Avi, I think, has to say who he is and why come back to the NDP, right? I think he has a huge opportunity. I think Avi has a huge opportunity to take those climate activists, to take the people who care about the environment that Mark Carney promised he was going to deliver on. And I think he has an opportunity to win that vote hugely. The Stephen Guilbeaults of that. Pierre, I think, has to, he really has to be mindful of his tone. There's no doubt about it, because not everybody so for me, tone doesn't offend me. You can tell. I don't know. I never got diagnosed with something, but maybe I got something. I don't know. But tone doesn't impact me, so I don't care. But there are people, especially sort of that older demographic. Well, you seem mean, and I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm being mean. I'm just being honest. And so I think there has to be that he has to connect with those folks, which he's great. I have never met anyone who's talked to Pierre one-on-one that didn't walk away going, wow, he's really great. And I'm sure maybe Mark Carney's the same, maybe leaders in general are like that. So he's going to have to make sure that people see that Pierre of the dad of the autistic daughter, the husband to the immigrant wife, the son of a gay man. All of those things are really important for Canadians to see who Pierre is. Pierre has built his whole reputation around policy and economics and finance. But we have seen time and time again, Canadians vote on how you make them feel, not on what you deliver. But they're coming to a point where they're not going to be able to get through with that anymore because they can't afford to eat and they're in survival mode. So vibes are going to matter, but the policy is equally going to matter.
Is Pierre Poilievre the Conservative leader going into the next session of Parliament?
Yes.
Okay. Jordan?
Yeah, I think, well, pick up where Michelle left off. I think for the Conservatives, Pierre, he kind of needs a personality transplant over the summer, ideally, like to just let go of fighting the last election. And I think that's been really hard for him. Obviously, the Conservatives didn't win, but they had a really high historic result. And so it's been tough for him to let go of that and move on. And I think that is driving some of his worst impulses as a more negative communicator. And it's getting in the way of people actually forming a connection with him. And as Michelle said, it's not your policy. It really is how people feel about you, and they feel that connection. And right now, his sort of spikiness and his Trumpiness in some moments is a barrier to people feeling that connection. And I think if he were able to move on from last April, that would help him a great deal. So I think going, yes, they are doing a tour across the country. That's great, but don't, maybe not so many national press conferences. Go talk to real people. Go touch grass, and get focused. And that would probably be one of the best things that he could do. For the government, I think they have to be super attentive to the gap between their rhetoric and the expectations that they're setting and the change that people are actually feeling in their day-to-day lives. Because right now that gap is huge. You will time and again see ministers, see the prime minister going out and talking about how fast they're moving, the breadth of the changes that they're making. And while that may be true at a high level, it still is not being felt by Canadians on the ground. And at the same time as they're spending a lot of time on those really kind of high level economic stuff, and they're doing lots to sort of make the investment environment appealing for businesses. And they're doing lots to, all of those things. But regular people, workers, we're facing higher unemployment rates. People's wages are not keeping pace with inflation. Housing is really expensive. Groceries are really expensive. Our healthcare system is a mess. And we have provinces like Alberta introducing private healthcare, and the federal government's not saying anything. They have to keep an eye on those other issues that people really, truly experience in their lives and make sure that they are putting just as much energy and attention into solving those issues as they are on the bigger, more global, more international things. Because people, it's like when if you have a friend who kind of has a not so great boyfriend, and you tell the friend, if he wanted to, he would. That's how it is. If he wanted to, he would. If he wanted to fix our healthcare system, he would, right? If he wanted to make that a priority, he would. So right now, when Canadians see situations like we saw over Christmas, right? This is a really kind of a sad example, Algoma Steel and Sault Ste. Marie, they laid off over 1,000 workers, pink slips right before Christmas. They've been hit so hard by the tariffs. And the government had given money to Algoma Steel. And so when that happened, the company was made whole. They got money from the government. The shareholders were made whole. They got their money. And 1,000 Canadian workers got pink slips right before Christmas. So those are the types of things that people remember. And so they have to be really attentive to that gap. And then for the NDP, I think that for Avi Lewis, it's so important. He's got to go out. He's got to really be visible. He's got to introduce himself to Canadians. They should put a little bit of money behind that digitally so that they can get that in front of people who might not have the chance to see him in person. The NDP has a big advantage because they just had a leadership race this year. They got 100,000 members across the country who are very active, very engaged. They're mobilized. Go meet those people. Go get them out in communities. Capitalize on some of that energy and some of the focus that we've seen on exactly those questions of sort of who is winning and who is losing under this government. When we're asking people to kind of take a hit from tariffs or from economic pressure or from budget cuts, who's getting asked to take that hit and really go out and make that case on the doorstep. So that is the advice I would have for the NDP. And I hope they do it.
All right, Nicole, last word to you.
Thank you. I agree with what everybody said here, especially related to the NDP. That name recognition has to be up. I don't really have a good sense of even who the leader is and what he stands for and what this new kind of party looks like under his leadership too. So I'm really interested to see them planting that stake in the ground over the summer and us understanding a little bit more about what they have to offer. For the Conservatives, Pierre just needs to stop yelling at the sky a little bit. In my opinion, he needs to dress for the job that he wants, and that's being the leader and being the prime minister. And it still feels like he's stuck kind of in opposition mode always, and isn't really laying out a vision for Canadians that is inspirational or forward-looking, and is just in his job, and that it is his job just to attack government, and he's doing a good job on that. But I want to see a little bit more inspirational messaging from the Conservatives to frame out what an alternative could look like, because right now they're just getting crushed by having nothing on the table. And for the Liberals, I think it's just staying tight on the comms piece. We talked a little bit about this condo bailout, and even the Prime Minister acknowledged today in his press conference that it didn't really land the way that they intended it to. And we used to have a saying that sometimes the Liberal Party has a habit of stepping on all the rakes and then actively looking for more rakes in the yards to step on when it comes to their own strategy. And so I just want to really avoid that again under this administration.
It's got that visual of I can't tell you what cartoon it is, and you just step on the rake over and over and over again.
Yeah, under this new
Minister
government,
Robertson's out there looking for more rakes as we speak.
So I think just staying really tight on the comms angle too, and making sure that those issues, when it comes to healthcare and all of the items that we discussed today, don't kind of creep up in a way that we haven't really paid attention to, because we've been really focused on international trade and these trade deals in CUSMA and being in Ottawa and living in Ottawa and not going and touching grass. And so, hopefully the summer will allow a little bit more of an opportunity to get out, to shake hands with Canadians. And because Mark Carney is so good at that, as the leaders are, as Michelle said, he's a dad. He's great. And he's really personable, and he's easy to get along with. So you see him winking at the camera. Like, that's him. Like, there's no airs about him. He is who he is at all times. And I'm excited for Canadians to get more of a sense of that over the summer.
Can I ask you, I'm being bold now. Can I ask you a question?
Please.
What do you think about that hot mic moment of him saying MPs are only good for votes?
I don't know, Amanda, if you have thoughts too, but I think that was like a lighthearted exchange and probably part of a bigger exchange that happened in that. And so obviously that's the clip that came.
I'm not trying to bait you into something. I'm not. I honestly am not. I'm not trying to create that. I think I like this conversation. I'm not trying to do it. I just think it's very interesting, right? Because on the outside, I don't know Mark Carney. It's just what I see. And I just thought that was wild. I think that was a wild thing to do, but it
felt to me like he was almost just getting a little too comfortable.
Yeah. I think that across the board, generally speaking, I feel like I've seen this a bit of a shift to slightly too much comfort.
Yeah.
And I've raised it a couple of times actually on CBC, where there's a tightness that I think is still required, so that you don't slip into some of those misreads, or you don't slip into some of those, faulty moments. And I like candid. Generally speaking, I think people like that, but I think he could afford to be, I don't know if polished is the word, or slightly more, or scripted. I don't like scripted, but something that keeps. I think
it's the daddy energy that he has to convey.
Yeah, I know.
Lead us, Big Daddy, right?
Big Daddy.
Oh God,
I think that comes with time and confidence, right? So as a politician, you are quite guarded. I can just and you get actually more guarded. But if you're doing well, your guard comes down. So you start to get more confident, right? And so I would argue equally that it's showing who you really are. So that's what I would actually say. So I think, but it is tough. It's a tough position, because every single thing you say is used or weaponized against you. So it's always that's why people get so annoyed interviewing politicians, because they don't really say anything because they can't, because when they do, I've always said, I want to write this book, you become a punching bag. And so you are beat up so much that in essence, you lose your human connection, because you don't trust anybody. Right. And so, but when you think you're untouchable, or you think you're winning and you have it, you also can do the opposite. So it's only when you're really in fear that you're more guarded. So I don't know. Anyway, it's a very interesting thing to me because being on the, and I'm not very good at hiding my feelings, as you guys know. Like, I was a terrible politician.
But he also has to be careful, right? Because it reinforces a negative story about him, which is that he's dismissive and doesn't listen to others. So that's, it's like, it's not all of these sort of off the cuff things aren't equal. They can be fine, or they can be damaging if they reinforce a negative story that, you know, are already, like we've seen sort of his caucus members, you know, writing a letter to him saying they're not feeling listened to, some of them. And so there is history to all of those things. So I think that makes a huge difference in how it lands.
But that's his experience, right? Like, he's never been elected. He was never an elected official. So that is completely in line with his lived experience as a manager or a CEO. And somebody wrote to me today, they're like, don't call him a CEO as a bad thing, because there's many great CEOs, they're great leaders. And so I was like, okay, well, how would you position that then? But I think it's in line with who he is as his experience. Like, you've never really had to answer to people per se, other than shareholders, I guess. Shareholders.
Yeah.
I think the greatest off the cuff Mark Carney moment was the high kick with the bonhomme. And that's going to go down in history for me.
I forgot about that.
How could you forget?
There's my rose. That's my rose right there.
The bonhomme high kick.
Yeah. We knew we were going to get there.
Oh,
sometime.
Yeah. I'm going to frame that picture for my office. All right.
We made it.
We're going to leave that there. We're going to have all of you back with a special 4-hour episode so we can actually dive into all of these conversations. But
it's good. We'll bring wine. It'll be fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think we'll elevate.
Season 4, here we come. All right. Jordan, Michelle, Nicole, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a great summer.
Thanks ladies. It was great.
Thank you.
One of the things we talk about a lot on this show is trust. Trust in institutions, trust in information, and trust in the systems people rely on every day. In a digital world where scams can spread just as quickly as misinformation, protecting that trust matters. Fraudsters today are using increasingly sophisticated tactics: phishing text, fake investment offers, and phone calls that sound surprisingly convincing. But there are some simple things that you can always count on. Your bank will never ask for your password. They will never ask for your PIN. And they will never ask you to move your money to a so-called safe account. Those are classic warning signs of a scam. That's why Canada's banks take fraud prevention seriously. They provide free tools and practical tips to help Canadians recognize the warning signs and protect themselves online. Because Canada's banks are on your side. They know how hard you work for your money, and helping Canadians keep it safe matters. For all the essential information, visit cba.ca/scams. That's cba.ca/scams. Our next guest has a story that is both deeply personal and profoundly important. Marina Nemat is an internationally acclaimed author, human rights advocate, and survivor of political imprisonment in Iran. Her best-selling memoir, Prisoner of Tehran, recounts her arrest at just 16 years old during the Iranian Revolution. Sentenced to death for her political views, Marina spent more than 2 years in Tehran's notorious Evin prison, where she endured imprisonment, interrogation, and unimaginable challenges before eventually being released and immigrating to Canada. Since its publication, Prisoner of Tehran has been translated into a dozen languages and has helped readers around the world better understand the human cost of authoritarianism, the resilience of the human spirit, and the importance of defending freedom and human rights. Welcome, Marina.
Thank you for having me.
I honestly thank you for coming and on to talk about your life and your book that's coming out very soon, because it is really a privilege to kind of dive into your perspective on global affairs and your history with everything that you experienced and wrote about in your book, The Prisoner of Tehran. So let's dive in at the beginning. You kind of became an accidental activist in that you stood up for yourself within your school, and that changed your life. Can you tell us a little bit about that progression?
I was an average girl. I was in love with Donny Osmond. I watched The Little House on the Prairie every Thursday night. And I wanted to become a medical doctor. And I was a hardworking student. I loved listening to the Bee Gees. I loved partying. I liked boys. But I was a very I wasn't a daring teenager, like I did the average basic stuff. And then the revolution happened. And I'm not going to get into the history of that. That's basically history. But things changed, not overnight, but within a few months, basically, maybe a couple of years. All the rules changed. So Donny Osmond, Bee Gees, nail polish, hanging out with boys, partying, dancing, basically looking pretty became illegal. And you have a 16-year-old girl that grew up in a bikini on the beach, dancing to the Bee Gees, and you tell her she has to cover up and is not allowed to look pretty. And the uglier she looks, the happier the government is. And teenagers rebel against the color of the wall. And I had good reason, and so did my friends. So we rebelled, and it was sheer teenage rebellion. Our generation basically stood up and said, wait a second, what are you talking about? And many of us were arrested. We were tortured. Many of us didn't survive.
So can you dive into that a little bit? Because we talk about authoritarian regimes a lot when we look at global conflict and the history of the world. But you've actually lived under one and experienced the worst of that. Can you tell us what that was like and what you talk about in your book?
Well, I had just fallen in love with a young man, and during the revolution, he just disappeared. And we found out later that he had been murdered and by the Shah's soldiers. And I think that was the first punch in the face that I got. Like literally my world completely collapsed around me, because I didn't know that things like that could happen, that someone could go to a protest rally and never ever come back. It was news to me. And then fast forward a couple of years, and I was the one with my friends, because we said to the government, we want to wear the bikini, we want to dance, we want to sing, we want to be happy. And the government said no. So we attended protest rallies, not because we knew what was going on in the world, not because we were very aware and we understood what democracy is. No, because basic rights, things that we had to deal with every day, were gone. And our parents were too busy. My parents, parents had a mortgage, they had lives, they had jobs, they had car payments. They were not really paying attention. But for us teenagers, going to a protest rally sounds like a lot more fun than doing homework. So we were out on the streets as slogans against the government, against, the new rules, new laws. And then we were being shot at by the Revolutionary Guard. But, you're 15 and there are gunshots around you. And you always think, the bullet is never going to hit me, because you feel invincible. You're 15. So that is how you feel, until either the bullet hits you or you get arrested. And many of us were arrested, usually at home, on the street, at school. They would just show up and round you up and take you to prison.
So you in the book talk about coming from Iran to Canada. And I wonder if you can just share with us kind of the dichotomy there of what you experienced in terms of activism or having a voice under the Iranian regime versus when you got to Canada, and your life since coming here, your ability to advocate or teach or talk openly about the situation in Iran.
Well, after I was released from prison, I was in prison for 2 years, 2 months, and 12 days. I was just shy of 19 when I was released. And I went home and sat at the dinner table with my parents. First night, my boyfriend was there, a couple of family friends, my mom, my dad, and they talked about the weather.
My gosh.
Nobody said, hey, it was probably hell. They knew about executions. They knew about torture. They knew about rape. They knew about all of the horrible things, like, But nobody said, do you want to talk about it? Probably not. But when you're ready, we really want to know. Nobody acknowledged the ordeal.
Wow.
And when you're so young and you go through something like that, and then the world pretends it never happened. It's business as usual. Just go on. Just be who you are. And everybody told me, oh, you look great. You look fine. Just move on. Just do your thing. I had PTSD, but post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't know it because nobody said, well, you might need to see a doctor. A doctor who would have talked to me about it would have probably gone to jail. But nevertheless, there was no way for me to deal with it. I was left on my own, completely to my own devices. So I was in this state of shock, in this state of deep trauma, and I just had no way out. So I just did what everybody wanted me to do, just pretend everything is good and just move on. So I studied. I couldn't go back to school, but I got my high school diploma writing the test. And eventually I got married. And my husband and I, we decided that we had to leave Iran. Like there was no way we could stay. We always felt in danger. And the government wouldn't let me leave. They finally did. They gave me a limited passport. And I told them I'll be back. I had to guarantee my return. I did. I was lying. But we left. We came to Canada. And by the way, thanks to Canada for taking us in, because we would have been literally drowning out there, like nowhere to go. So Canada, thank you. So Canada gave us a home. We came, and everything looked, at the beginning, I just remember everything looked strange. It was like I had come from another dimension. It was like I felt like an extraterrestrial or something. Like I was an alien, like literally alien. I'm talking in another planet. And I was here, and I was looking at people, and people were happy, and they were doing things, and they looked normal. And you could go to the supermarket, and you could look the way you wanted, and you could just do stuff. And it was just weird. But good things, you get used to them fast. So life went on. But the fact was that I still had PTSD, and I wasn't ready. Like I didn't know how to talk about it. Yes, freedom of speech and all of that, but there was such a gap between me and being able to express what I had witnessed and experienced that I didn't know how to do it. And it took many years. It was in year 2000. I brought my parents to Canada. It was when my mother died that suddenly I started having severe symptoms of PTSD. I hadn't had any till then.
Wow.
But then the symptoms began, and I realized I have to deal with them. And that was as a form of therapy. I began to write, and then one thing led to the other, and then I took creative writing, and then people said, oh my God, your story is just fascinating. I didn't think it was. I thought it was just something, like stuff happens, and okay, stuff happened to me, but a lot of stuff happens to other people. What? So you know what? It was like once I learned how to tell the story, once the story found its way out of me, which was quite traumatic on its own, because it was something that had been dormant for like 20 years. And for it to come out, it was like giving birth to something that's bigger than you.
Right.
Like for us women who have given birth, it's tough. But this was giving birth to something bigger than me. And it just wouldn't come out. It was just stuck there. And just getting it out was this whole thing. And I'm lucky I survived it. The book met the world and published in 30 countries, Prisoner of Tehran. And I was astounded at how well it was received. And I was grateful because, this story, I mean, this is my perspective, right? I'm not telling the story of all of Iran's prisoners, heaven forbid. No, this is just my little perspective. But I think it's a perspective that lacked in the world of literature, where the human experience of bearing witness to history is so tremendously important, because history is written by victors and by people who are not really invested in the human experience. When I'm not a politician, I'm not a historian, I'm just an average person.
That witnessing history is such a dominant theme in your book, and you really take the reader into your experience and the horrific things that took place in Iran and coming to Canada and the challenges around that. What do you want our listeners to know about your book in terms of people that haven't read it? Why is this an important part of literature?
Because I believe that horror in history doesn't happen overnight.
Mm.
It's not that we go tonight and tomorrow we have Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Khomeini,
Mm-hmm.
the whole bunch of them on our hands. Horror happens little by little. It's like droplets. And again, like my parents, like the adults when I was a teenager in Iran, people are busy.
Mm-hmm.
We all have jobs and mortgages and car payments and teenagers to argue with and, all sorts of problems. And we fail to see as these droplets of horror, they accumulate.
Mm-hmm.
This loss of freedoms, of freedom of speech is top of it, because that's usually the first thing that goes. So these various kinds of freedoms that are lost, are muddied, are dragged into mud, and distorted. This is an issue. And I think it is when we read the stories of people who have lived through them. I've received emails and all sorts of messages from readers that they have said that it was when they read my book that they took a moment to look around and think about all the things in their life. And this is various countries. It's like 30 countries in the world, to look around and see what is going on in their world. And in many cases, they have become worried. And they also have told me that what they have come away from reading the book is that the world is not black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so easy to vilify the enemy and say, the enemy is not human. The enemy is something whose life can be completely disregarded. That people have realized that, throughout history, the victim becomes the torturer and the torturer becomes the victim. Because tables turn. So governments change, regimes change. And the ones who were actually, they were in prison and being tortured, now they sit on top of the power, and now they can do the same to those who did it to them. And this cycle of history is extremely dangerous. And it needs us. It needs you and me to stand in its way and say, wait a second. This is not the way it's supposed to be done. Because if we do this, we are forever trapped in the whole cycle of torture and victimization, and we will never, ever get out of it.
This is, I have so many more questions for you about your story, and I'm hoping that you will come back and talk to us, because you have a new book that's coming out very soon on July 14th. It's called Mistress of the Persian Boarding House. Can you give us a little sneak peek on what that book is about?
It's available for pre-order. So if anybody is interested, it is inspired by my Russian grandmother Zina's experience of the Russian Revolution. She was from a well-off family, and then the revolution happened. Similarities here between my experience and hers, and she lost a lot. She lost basically everything, and she had to leave her country. Again, similarities, but the war was going on, the First World War. So instead of escaping west, it was easier to escape east. So, and her husband had been born in Iran, so they had connections, and they went to Iran, and then other bad things happened there. Eventually, she found a group of women, and they banded together, and they supported each other through a lot of upheaval, and they became each other's family, and they, in a way, at the end, they thrived. So it's basically a story of women supporting women. And she crossed paths, my grandmother, with the man who would later become the king of Iran.
Wow.
the father of the Shah against whom the revolution happened. And they had a relationship that spanned
Really?
decades.
What?
So very interesting one, for that
Yeah.
matter, a very strange one. And I don't even know much about it. I basically, the nonfiction part of it is just a sentence or two that my godmother told me
Wow.
quietly without my mother knowing, because my mother wouldn't have approved. But that's all I know. So the rest of it I had to build from research and reading this and reading that, and kind of I had to fictionalize it. So it is historical fiction, but in the heart of it is my grandmother, Zina.
Well, I, for one, can't wait to read that book. And hopefully our book club will be able to read it as soon as it's out. Marina, thank you. What an incredible story. What an incredible life. What an incredible book. And books, soon to be the second one, July 14th. You can pre-order it now. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wow. Here we are sitting at the end of season 3. Would you believe it, Amanda?
No, I can't actually, because earlier I called it season 2.
Oh, you've just blocked out that whole year of the federal election.
Yep, that was the year actually.
Yep, that makes sense. We had a lot going on. This
Yeah, so
season
much.
has also been so incredible. And
Yeah.
we just wanted to take a moment to thank the thousands of people that tune into us every week
Yes.
to chat politics and to listen to our stories and our guests, and some of you have been along on this ride with us now for 3 years,
Yeah.
which is unbelievable. And we cannot be more appreciative. So
I have loved every episode. I have
Yeah.
loved the conversations we've had. I've loved the chance that we get to speak to such a diversity of voices, that we've had people who have violently disagreed, but have talked about it in the most civil manner. And I hope that when the listeners take it away, they take away something that we've tried to instill, which is that you can violently disagree, but that you can have really important, insightful, thoughtful conversations, and you can walk away shaking hands. And I think that's what Rach and I do all the time. There, we, even though I always tease her that she's a closet liberal, she's not. And
maybe if you keep saying it, it'll happen.
I know.
We'll launch season 4 with me all in red.
But in our disagreements, I think that the thing that we've also found is a lot of common ground. And the more and more conversations we have with expert voices from around the country, I realize that we have more in common than we have differences. And that has been my biggest learning and my biggest takeaway from 3 seasons of Beyond a Ballot.
Yeah. And we're so fortunate to talk to those voices. I also want to take a moment to thank all of the companies that have contributed to our podcast over the years, specifically DoorDash, our title sponsor, who really took a chance on the idea of women talking about politics in this country, and have fully supported us for so many years. We love you. We love you, DoorDash. And to everybody else that has contributed to making these conversations possible this year. We appreciate it so much. I will say we are back. Season 4 will be launching, mark your calendars, on September 25th. And it is actually going to be a live taping that we are doing that week with some very big names. So stay tuned for that information. Have a wonderful summer to everybody. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you in September.
Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.